sing the thunder song.
Wait.
When you hear the sound of thunder, don't you get too scared. Just grab your thunder buddy and say these magic words.
Hello, and welcome back to another edition of the Thunder Buddies podcast. I'm your host for today, Darnell Mayberry, joined by Anthony Slater from Orlando and Eric Horn, as always, in the studio with me. And we had to start this one with a little vintage Tupac. It's a sad day in Oklahoma City. We had to pour out a little liquor.
For the franchise and the city, right?
For the franchise, the city, the fans, the state,
maybe
the region.
The region.
Global fans. I mean, more.
Yeah.
You're right, the region, and it impacts here more than elsewhere. But, yeah, you know, there's fans, you know, from New Zealand. There's fans from Europe. There's fans everywhere from this Thunder team. And I think that impacts them, too.
Might have to pour a little out for the competitive balance of the NBA, too.
Yeah, the 2016-17 season.
Everybody at 82-0, hashtag 82-0.
It's pretty much a given what's going to happen with the Warriors. And
they're going to be really good. I mean, you never know what happens with injuries and other things. And, you know, LeBron's trying to get Wade to Cleveland right now. That's the latest rumor. But they're going to be really good.
All right, so where do we start with this whole thing?
Just with the fact that he actually did it, to me, is surprising. But, I mean, I've been kind of, I don't want to say warning you guys, but I kind of want to say warning you guys.
Okay.
Just ever since I was in Austin, like, my question, and it's kind of been on my mind lately, and this isn't just you, it's the country, it's everyone following this, it's me. Just should we have seen this coming more than we did? With the Rock Nation, to some of his comments. You know, people want to talk about how his comments at the exit interview, I remember Barry even wrote a column about how, like, it signaled there's no way he's leaving. But in a sense, like, I remember when I asked him about would he consult with Russell Westbrook about this, seemed like an important thing. He's like, you know what, I don't know that I can. He's part of the Thunder, and it's more about me and my people. Need to talk about this. I mean, that to me, now looking back, is kind of a hint. I just think, you know, the thing I wrote in Austin when he was talking about all the different cities and, like, I don't know, just being around him that week, I just think we should have seen it coming more.
What was the thing that most stood out to you, Anthony, about him making the decision and us perhaps not seeing it coming? What was the thing that you saw in him that really made you think? Because the last time I was on with you guys, I think Anthony said 71%, and we ended the podcast with me saying, I'm out, you tripping. But you were actually, you know, you were on to something. What made you really believe that this was a possibility?
I just mentioned some of those hints dropped in the exit interview, just in the week in Austin, and just kind of how him and, you know, his business people were shaping it. The fact that they had it in Austin, that his camps that are always in Oklahoma City, his summer camp, was held in Austin this year. They didn't have one scheduled for Oklahoma City. There was always a thought of, you know, he can schedule one down the road. He's in the Olympics, whatever. But, you know, I think that's a hint. And then when you really, at least when I really started to question it, is then when we started to get leaks about what it was going to be like. It was going to be in the Hamptons. It's going to be, you know, at this mansion and these teams. And they were slowly leaking out this info, this just incredible production that they were putting on. And to me, it kind of signaled that maybe he wasn't fully in control of the situation. You know, is Nike back in it? I mean, you didn't want to believe it because, I mean, you kind of, knowing Kevin Durant, you kind of feel like, you know, he wouldn't allow, he can allow a lot of things. He can allow business at times to get a hold of it, but his basketball life, where he's going to play basketball, you just, you know, I don't know. To me, I just think the fact that as big a production as it was kind of a signal that this thing may be getting off the hinges, at least from a Thunder perspective, as far as if he was, like, fully committed to the Thunder like we thought he might be, which was kind of like the overriding thought across the country, then he would have probably tried to lock in right away and chase this Al Horford rumor that was out there.
The one thing that Yeah, I mean, he had a chance, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But the one thing that, and I think, Eric, we talked about this in the weeks leading up to it, that I never understood was why he wouldn't just come out and say, I want to be here. Not wouldn't, he didn't. He never said, this is where I want to be. I expect to be here. I anticipate being here. And I never understood why he wouldn't just say that. And I never had the answer for that question. And now we do.
Yeah, I feel like people were also coaching him up throughout the process saying don't make these definitive statements like that.
But that's not even a definitive statement. That's just saying what you want. He never came out and said, I want to be here. Not, I'm going to be here. I want to be here. And that, to me, was a red flag that I never had an answer for, and I should have thought more about that looking back. He never told us that he wanted to be here.
One thing I think before we kind of move deeper, like, this is very much within his right to do. And like we can't criticize it from a sporting perspective and some different things. But look, he wants to play for the Warriors. He's a free agent. He gave the city 8 incredible years. His jersey will be retired in Oklahoma City. Like everything he did to the community, to the franchise, like that needs, like, you know, I thought Sam Presti was good at his press conference last night. Like that needs to be appreciated, remembered. He gave this, you know, 50 years from now, if this franchise is, you know, still in existence, still kind of going strong in Oklahoma City, this will probably still be considered potentially the golden era when they had 2 Hall of Famers in their primes playing together.
They got to win a championship. If they win a championship, then that'll overtake it. But I understand what you're saying.
I mean, you're right in a sense, but I think just, you know what I mean? Like how people look back on like the Phoenix Suns and the Nash and how fun those teams were. People will remember these Thunder teams as being very fun and you know, kind of brash.
And not just that, but it was also new. Like the newness of it. It's a new franchise, new city. You know, like the nostalgia of it all contributes to it being the golden years.
So, I mean, that needs to be remembered through this process. And the fact that, it sounds like we're sitting here saying, how could he? But the truth, like, he could do whatever he wanted. It's just, I think we're just discussing how big a surprise it is that he actually pulled the trigger on doing it.
So you were at 71%, fluctuating, I think, between 65 and 71, 75 maybe. In the end, how surprised were you?
I was at about 50-50 Saturday. To be honest, when you started to hear that leak that they don't know if the Thunder's going to get a second meeting, they may get a second meeting, that was like, okay. I mean, clearly he's wrestling with it. Clearly, even if he allows a second meeting, it isn't a second meeting. You always thought the second meeting was going to be like the Thunder go in, and it's like, yeah, how did it go this week? And go, okay, what contract do you want? 5 years, 1 year? Like, you kind of just thought that was going to be the conversation. But the fact that it felt like they were going to try to pitch themselves again, to me, in a sense, I mean, it's so easy to say now, but it was probably already over. It might have been over by what, Saturday? Friday, like when the Warriors met with him, Friday morning?
I've had some people in the Bay Area tell me that this thing has been in the works for years.
Yeah.
As many as 3 years ago. And that's why the Warriors structured their contracts the way that they did. Because they knew that he wanted to go there and that this was a possibility this year.
Would you call that being light years ahead of the competition?
Hey, Joe Lacob is looking pretty good right now. He said he talked all of that stuff, and now he's looking pretty good right now.
Look, if they were working on this 3 years ago, if they had this in mind 3 years ago, that's seemingly light years in an NBA time frame, you know? I mean, 3 years is – Sam Presti was worried about the now. And
yeah. I'm interested to know, you know, I agree in that sentiment. Like, this clearly has been bubbling under the surface for a while. But what if the Thunder close out Game 6? What if they go to the finals? What if they win the title? Does he leave a team that just won the title? What if the Warriors win a second straight title like they were what if either of those 3-1 leads that the Thunder had on the Warriors, that the Warriors had on the Cavs, what if those aren't blown?
Yeah, but Anthony, we've always talked about the fact that, at least around the office, we've always kicked around the idea, at least, that if they did win a championship, in some ways that would make him more likely to leave because he fulfilled his mission, he achieved his goal, and he now no longer owes anything to Oklahoma City. He doesn't owe anything to Oklahoma City as it is.
I tell you what, I think, look, the city wasn't going to take it good regardless, but I think they would have taken it a lot better if he had left with a title. You know what I mean? They would have understood, look, he just doesn't want to live here anymore, whatever. It'd be, I don't know, that'd be so interesting, though, to leave a team that just beat, like, go ahead.
Our OSU beat writer, our football writer, John Helsley, sent in this email to us earlier this week, or maybe it was yesterday. But he compared Kevin Durant to Albert Pujols, who played for the Cardinals. And in terms of the Cardinals being able to build up prospects the way that the Thunder has, and Pujols going to a team after having a bunch of success and people thinking for sure he was going to stay. And I said there was one difference in that Pujols did win that title, and then he left after he won the title. So it's sort of like you were saying, Anthony, it sort of leaves your fan base with a sense of, hey, even though this guy left us that we really don't want to leave and we're really disappointed because he did so much for us, he did leave us with this championship. We do have something to show for it. And I think it stings a little more that not only is going to Golden State, who you came so close to beating, but you're going without the chance of bringing something special to a community. And he brought a ton of special stuff to a community, but a championship in particular. So I thought that Albert Pujols, Kevin Durant parallel was kind of interesting. Totally off topic.
My question within this is, like, okay, let's say you're him. Like, you want to go to Golden State. You're a free agent. You've been with the Thunder franchise for 9 years, in Oklahoma City for 8 years. You've done so much. Like, look, he tried his best to win a title. He went through injury issues. Like, nobody's questioning his drive to try to win that title for Oklahoma City. Even if he was thinking about Golden State the last few years, like, it's not like he played any less hard in the West Final. So if he just wanted to leave, that's fine. That's it. That's within his right. Do you think he could have or should have handled himself differently? Because I know, like, you're saying, well, he didn't come out this year and say, I want to be in Oklahoma City. Well, he didn't want to be in Oklahoma City, so he shouldn't have come out and said that. And it's not like he should have come out and said, well, I'm really thinking about Golden State. I want to go to Golden State. You know what I mean? It would have been worse. Imagine if he said that during the year. So what – I mean, like, if this is just what he wanted to do, I mean, I'm not sure I'm with the whole Hampton production of it all, and maybe the last few days he could have maybe altered. I think that was a little bit too much Nike, Rock Nation, that side of it. But I'm not sure. I mean, he called Sam Presti. He had 2 meetings with them. Like, maybe he could have given the Thunder more heads up. But the truth is, maybe, I think he truly has been wrestling with the decision to actually leave. So, I mean, my question to you guys, like, where do you think he could have done something differently or better? Is there somewhere he could have?
I don't really have a problem with the rhetoric and the words he used. I mean, I don't think it benefits any athlete to come, or any coach for that matter, to come out and say, I'm not leaving somewhere, I want to be somewhere, because people are just going to come back and use that against you. I mean, people have been using Kevin Durant's tweets from 6 years ago against him this week and saying, oh, why are these guys all joining together? We're supposed to compete against each other. He said that 6 years ago. He was a completely different person. Like, people change, Like, people get immature and pop off on Twitter.
I hate the bringing back of tweets.
Yeah.
I don't even want to imagine, people going 6 years deep in my tweets, although I was never, like, outrageous. But, I mean, even if I was quoted as much as Kevin Durant was at age 20, 21, 22, 23, like, I wouldn't even want to read some of my quotes.
Exactly. Like, you're saying ridiculous stuff. Like, there's no telling. I mean, he was 21 years old 6 years ago. That's ridiculous to even bring that stuff up. But, like, from my perspective, I think that the only way that I kind of have a problem with the whole drawing out the meetings and the Hamptons part of it is the timing of it, in the sense that it leaves the Thunder with few options in terms of going after free agents. There's not a lot of guys that they can really go after now that already haven't been accounted for by other teams.
It puts them in a tough spot, but I'm not sure I blame him, because unless he, like, truthfully, like, this entire time knew, like, okay, it's Warriors 100%, I just need to act like it's a process, and I want to have a weekend in the Hamptons, and I want Pat Riley to come up. That's the thing to me, like, why is Pat Riley coming up there on Monday? Like, he had no shot. He had no shot in this thing. But, I mean, then it's like, well, you probably should have left the Thunder in a better spot. But the truth is, I think he was wrestling with it. I think this whole entire thing was really tough on him, just from some of the stuff I've heard. So, I mean, it does put the Thunder in a bad spot, especially where the free agent market is right now. But I mean, you can't blame the guy. I mean, I think he was really didn't know until he knew.
Yeah, but I disagree with you guys there. He's got no reason or he's got no reason to help the Thunder. He's going now to compete against the Thunder. So why would he do anything to help the Thunder at that point?
I can agree with you on that standpoint. And on the other hand,
better is what he did in a sense.
And on the other hand, like, you could look at it this way too. If he would have come back to the Thunder, the Warriors side would be saying, well, he strung us out and now we're handicapped because we let Harrison Barnes go.
Which people are still holding on hope for.
Yeah.
That he pulls a DeAndre Jordan.
Maybe he'll come back.
Online that he's going to just take it to July 7th or 8th, strip him down to their roster and come back. Unlikely.
They bring Ersan Ilyasova to the Hamptons and have him stand in front of the door and say, "No, Kevin, you are not leaving." They basically just hold him hostage.
Ersan,
he's a big dude.
Anyway, I think right around the time you hit publish on the Players Tribune, there's no going back. DeAndre was just leaked to the media. He never came out with a story. My next chapter. What do you think of? I guess we always kind of knew it was going to be on the Players Tribune. What did you think of the 300-word article, whatever you want to call it, first person?
I thought it was real hollow and shallow.
It
personally.
was, right?
I thought it was extremely shallow.
For both sides. Even if I'm you know what I mean? Explain deeply why you want to go to the Warriors.
Yep.
If you're a Warriors fan. I mean, I guess if you're a Warriors fan, whatever, you got Kevin Durant. But, I mean, just kind of explain what you mean there. But I kind of agree. I just felt like it was written in 2 hours by a ghostwriter in the Hamptons mansion.
It didn't even take 2 hours to write that.
Yeah, you're right.
Kevin has always been the type to say and do all the right things, right? He's always tried to make sure that he has basically walked the fine line of being this clean-cut golden boy. And so I think that piece in the Players Tribune was essentially that. He wasn't going to say too much. He wasn't going to praise Golden State too much. He wasn't going to ignore Oklahoma City. He's going to be apologetic, and that's what he was. And I think he took the safe route. And his first interview is probably going to be what really shed some light on his decision and what he was looking for beyond 3 other All-Stars and basically almost a guaranteed championship.
And I think he kind of alluded to that in the article. I didn't think it was completely hollow and shallow. I think there's some things to read into that. He was talking about his basketball growth and his growth as a person. And I think that goes back to, some of the things that Anthony wrote about in the Austin story about this guy who wanted to see some other stuff and grow as a man in a different city. And he showed his appreciation for Oklahoma City, but he also said he was talking about his growth. And
that means nothing to me, though, Eric. And here's why. Because
it might mean something to him.
What does it? And I think that's what me and Anthony are saying. What does that mean? Your growth as a player, you're already MVP. You're a scoring champion.
Okay, you know what that means? His growth as a player. It means that he has a better chance to win a championship there.
Maybe so, but we're left to read tea leaves at that point.
This is inarguable. He is now. I don't want to say closer to a title because either of these teams could have won it next year. He's got a way higher percentage to win a title next year than he would have in Oklahoma City.
I disagree with that. I disagree with that.
What would we say in Oklahoma City? If he came back, the Warriors are still very good. They're bringing Barnes back. They have their team. What is
Slater,
what's the Thunder's percentage
here's the thing.
chance?
Sam Presti just said it yesterday in his press conference. Al Horford was, quote, really, really interested, end quote, in coming here.
Yeah, I couldn't believe he said that publicly. You hear a lot of stuff like that privately and some different stuff from across the league people, but were you surprised?
Yeah, no doubt about it. It was shocking that he said that publicly, and maybe he's trying to save face and put on a good front, hey, we did everything we could.
That's kind of throwing Kevin under the bus a little bit.
It is throwing him under the bus. Kevin, if Al Horford came here and suddenly you've got Russ, Oladipo, Canner, Adams, Robertson, Payne, Sabonis, Durant, Horford, Ilyasova.
That's squad.
I'm sorry. You were just up 3-1. I'm getting fired up here, Slater. This is what you wanted. You were just up 3-1 on the team that you joined. And you're telling me that they still got that much of a better chance than you at winning a championship next year? I disagree with that.
And then you got rid of Serge Ibaka and got about as good of a Serge Ibaka replacement as you could possibly get in the NBA at power forward.
And KD said thanks, but no thanks. That's a sucker move, man. That's a sucker move.
He said it.
That's a sucker. I told you I'm getting fired. That's a sucker move.
Well, look, two things. Number one, I think what sometimes we ignore a little bit is that not only is he going in the Warriors, but he's completely knocking the Thunder off. So that is mathematically improving his odds of just strictly getting a ring as soon as possible. Look, I'm not saying that is his main reason, whatever. But I think the thing Eric talked about earlier, and look, I do agree with you as far as I think the letter in a sense was a bit hollow, but I agree with Eric's point overall, and like the story he talked about, what I wrote about the Austin story. Like, I think he's really wanted to live in a different part of the country that he's never lived in, the Bay Area. I think that intrigues him. I think the whole Warriors culture and the ball movement and that intrigues him. I think there was times last year that. Not just last year. I think there's been times the last 8 years that as much as the Russell Westbrook Durant duo is one of the NBA's most explosive, interesting duos that everyone will appreciate seeing. I think there's times the way Russ played frustrated him a bit. I don't know if he was ready for something new. There was that whole Jerry West phone call that was reported by Tim Kawakami and Christopher Sard about West really promoting to him that his offense, his threes would come a lot easier in Golden State, and that people would appreciate his defense and his rebounding more because it'd be on a stage where it would be shown more. I think that might have resonated with him. You guys both know this from covering him over the years. When does he get mad when somebody says, "Oh, you're a scorer," or something? No, people. He always says, "People underrate my defense. People underrate my rebounding." I'm more than that. I think that Jerry West conversation and just the overall thought that maybe going to Golden State he would be viewed as this more complete player maybe appealed to him. What do you guys think?
I think he took the easy way out.
Yeah, there's something to that.
I think he took the easy way out, and what really disappoints me, I'm not a Thunder fan, obviously. I don't care what he does. Just analyzing the situation. The thing that disappoints me about him is that they were up 3-1 on the Warriors. That proved, or at least should have proven to him, that you can beat that team. And you had a chance to come back with a better squad next year and go at it again. And they couldn't close, and it was largely his fault. So it's not like he left something because the pieces around him weren't good enough. Mm-hmm. He wasn't good enough. Yeah, and that's the thing that's most disappointing to me.
LeBron in 2010, who left a bad Cleveland, not a bad Cleveland team, but not a Cleveland team set up to really compete with LeBron for a title.
Yeah. He left a title contender to go get an easy shot at a title.
And that's kind of some of the stuff that
he left his title contender. His built around him.
Yeah. And that's kind of how I think that, and I'm not gonna tell people how to feel, but I feel like it should be
okay. Sam Presti.
And then you proceed to tell them how to feel.
Bob Stoops, anybody who talks to the media. I'm not gonna, but well, this is how I feel. Okay, I'm going to tell you how I feel as a writer. I have no anger in my bones for what Kevin Durant did. I understand what he did for all the reasons that he said, if those reasons are true, for his growth as a person and as a player. That being said,
I got a long text message from Eric this morning.
That being said, I am disappointed. And I think that anger and disappointment are two very separate and different things. You can be calm and rational about something, but still be disappointed.
And let me just ask you to clarify that for a second, Eric. Are you disappointed that he left, or are you disappointed for your job standpoint that the team is not going to be as good? Or are you disappointed in him? Because I'm disappointed in him.
Okay, it's both. I'm disappointed that I don't get a chance and the city doesn't get a chance to experience one of the greatest athletes that's ever graced the NBA. I thought it was a pleasure to watch him this year. I've seen that guy do things that I've never seen a basketball player do in my life. It was a privilege, and I will cherish it. I've cherished the phone conversations I had with my parents, calling them after games saying, dude, this dude is unbelievable. But I'm also disappointed for the same reasons that you said. The guy was up 3-1, and there's no reason to think that they couldn't come back and challenge that team again. And from a competitive standpoint, like, you want to see guys that have the gifts that he has be able to elevate the guys around him. And he's done that at times. We've seen him elevate the guys around him. He's become a better passer. He's become this great rebounder and this guy that can facilitate offense.
Defender.
Yeah. He became an unbelievable all-NBA caliber defender in the playoffs.
That's what I don't understand about this whole report of this Jerry West call. Look, I understood some of the points made in it, especially like him wanting to play maybe in a more free-flowing offense. But I didn't understand the fact that his entire game wasn't appreciated enough. Like, what was everyone talking about in that West Finals? Was his defense and how it unlocked this small ball and his shot blocking and his rim protection and the Thunder's length, and he was the key to it all. Like, he was the best rebounder. I remember somebody's point was Thunder was the best rebounder team, you know, in 5 decades last year, and he was the top rebounder on the team. I mean, we talked about his rebound. We always talk about his rebound, and like, his game is appreciated. I hope that isn't a main reason.
Yeah, I've written about his defense a couple different times this year. I mean, that was one of the things that I would make a point to ask him about, because I knew that was something that was undersold. I wanted to ask him about his defense consistently because I knew how much pride he took in it. Like, the guy showed clear improvement in his defense this year. And that, again, like, to what I was saying, it's disappointing that there was so much progress shown in terms of like closing that gap between them and Golden State. You have an improved team coming back, and to essentially walk away from it to, I guess, lessen the load. It's disappointing. It's disappointing, but you know.
Look, okay, how different is it? My question is, because I don't want this at all to sound like it's like, look, I mean, I'll say it again, like, look, he's in every right to make this decision. How much different is our conversation right now if he left, but he just went to Boston? Like, he wanted a new adventure, he wanted a new challenge. He's going to go try to
totally
build
different.
up.
It's totally
team.
different if he goes to Boston and tries to just start from scratch and start over, and he just wanted a change of scenery. But to be that close to getting back to the NBA Finals, to make the progress, that's an important piece that Eric just mentioned. The progress that this team showed last year in terms of getting away from the hero ball, playing more of a team game. Billy Donovan coming in, instituting new principles, philosophies that they had never really shown before.
The progress they made from the Western Conference semis to the Western Conference Finals, from game 1 of the Western Conference semis, where they looked like hot garbage. And we were saying, well, we need to start playing it for the offseason. We need to start playing it for exit interviews. Yep. I mean, that was the conversation coming out of AT&T Center after that first game. The progress they made from the end of that game to the end of the Western Conference Finals. I mean, stark.
Yeah.
You know what else is surprising is that he had an escape route. He had the 1-year deal. It made all the sense in the world financially, which then gave him the chance to chase it one more time, to give it one more chance, to then go into the offseason next year with Russell Westbrook. And if he didn't see the progress he wanted with this team, if they didn't win it again, even if they did win it, whatever, he could then share the burden with Westbrook leaving. There'd be a more understanding from the franchise, from the fan base. Now, in a sense, from a guy like Russell Westbrook's got to feel pretty abandoned right now. I mean, there is... What do you guys? I mean, we can get into a Westbrook discussion in a little bit, but I mean, maybe there is stuff we have to remember that we might not know behind the scenes, which is potentially he sits down with Russ and Russ is like, "Look, I'm not staying beyond next year," and then he's like, "Well, I'm just going to go restart then." I mean, there is that possibility. I think we'll know that soon with how Russell handles this. If Russell decides to stick around and wants to sign long term, then that tells you that he obviously didn't tell Kevin that. But that's just something we don't know right now.
Is there a question in there?
a thought.
No, these are just comments.
No, it's so interesting to think about what their conversations and their relationship was leading up to this decision. That I think that's one of the more fascinating questions in the entire league right now. I mean, what were those guys talking about, and what isn't known about the discussions they had? Sam Presti saying that he and Collison sat down. Westbrook and Collison sat down with Durant before this whole process started. I mean, and who knows how many text conversations or phone calls these guys have had between the end of the season and now. So that's just fascinating to think about.
It's unknowable from us.
Look,
right now, it's interesting.
Here's my thing on the whole thing with Russ. All right, I don't think Kevin Durant wanted to play with him anymore, and maybe, just maybe, there was something to the narrative all along about KD and Russ, Avon and Stringer Bell. I think they were genuinely friends. I think they genuinely liked each other, maybe even loved each other, still do.
And wanted to win a title again.
And they gave it their all. Can't take anything away from those guys. They gave it their all. They weren't always smart about it and how they went about it, but they gave it their all, the best way they knew how. But, I mean, there were always little moments on the court of tension between those two. Kevin Durant standing in the corner, the your turn, my turn, just waiting for Russ to pass. Durant holding his arms out and then slapping his thighs when he didn't get the pass from Russ. Like, there were always, even Kevin's family, like, sitting on the bench. I mean, I remember years ago covering the team, they were always kind of grumbling when Russ would take over games. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't, but you could see them on the court side frustrated with how Russ would be playing. And Russ got a lot better. And that's another part of that progress we talked about. Like, Russ has gotten a lot better in terms of making better decisions, being more unselfish.
Second league in assists.
Yeah, so, like, he still shoots a whole lot, but he got a lot better in terms of some of his flaws. And I just think a big part of this that we'll probably never hear from Kevin or Russ or anyone else, I just think Kevin might have gotten tired of playing with Russell Westbrook, and that's a big indictment on Russell Westbrook, in my opinion.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I mean, like Russell Westbrook was born to play like Russell Westbrook plays. Why is Russell Westbrook in the league? Why is Russell Westbrook a top 5, top 10 player? Because he's Russell Westbrook. He plays with that ferocity, that just supreme confidence. If he was Mike Conley, if he had Mike Conley's mind, he'd be Mike Conley. You know what I mean? Like, he's not Steph Curry. He can't shoot like Steph Curry. Like, Russell Westbrook always had to play like that. I think he's, like, in a sense, like, unlocked the best he could out of himself where he's gotten now. So I'm not blaming Russell Westbrook. If Kevin Durant just didn't want to really play with that anymore, if that's one of the main reasons, like I said, we're speculating on a lot of this right now. But I don't know.
Because the Players Tribune thing was hollow. That's why we're speculating.
I mean, if
I'm blaming us for not realizing it sooner, that this narrative that was kind of out there, because the truth of it all along is, I feel like the question was always framed, what are these guys like off the court? They were always and will probably remain very strong friends, but the on-court tension, friction, whatever, that didn't bleed off the court. But the on-court friction, maybe we should have paid attention to more.
The thing that is also most troubling, I believe I might have said this before in various ways in previous months and years, is that Kevin Durant, and this is why I label it a sucker move, because he was the face of the franchise. He was the leader of that team, and he let Russell Westbrook take over that role. Kevin Durant was the only one who could have possibly said something to Russell in terms of reining him in, getting him in check, and he never, as far as we know, because actions speak louder than words, we never saw him actually rein in Russell Westbrook. And now he just left his own team to potentially get away from the guy and let him have it. And that, to me, like, as it just screams to me that Kevin Durant is not who we thought he was in terms of being a competitor, in terms of being a leader, and in terms of being an alpha male. He's just not that guy.
And I think that
that's doesn't okay too, right?
Yeah, no, it is. It is, Anthony.
Yeah, it's okay because that's just who he is now.
It doesn't
we know.
It doesn't mean that he's not a competitor. It just means that he's a different kind of competitor than most people are used to. He's not a Michael Jordan type competitor. He might be more of a Warrior style type of competitor where Steph Curry might be perfectly fine. Strength in numbers. They got a great logo. Motto or whatever. I mean, Steph Curry has a terrible series, and it's okay for him to let Klay Thompson take over for stretches of the game and let Klay do what he does or let Draymond do what he does. And you don't hear anything about potential grumblings of animosity or things like that. I mean, the Undefeated had a great piece yesterday from Mark Spears where he got into the text messages that Steph Curry had sent Kevin Durant saying, I don't care about the Under Armour and Nike and all the potential stuff like that and the shots. We just want you to come here and be a part of this and win championships together. Like, that might be more of Kevin Durant's personality than that alpha that people want and expect from him. He might be more comfortable playing alongside a bunch of guys who don't have these abrasive personalities like a Russell Westbrook. And not that Russell Westbrook's personality is bad, but it's different.
And that's cool, and I agree with everything you're saying. However,
still doesn't make it disappointing.
He had numbers here.
He did.
He would have had potentially Russell Westbrook, Victor Oladipo, Enes Kanter, Steven Adams, Al Horford. Those are numbers.
What if it was just not how he wanted to play? The thing about the Thunder, these two teams are very different in the sense of the Warriors are this maybe a style he wanted to play more, which was the passing, the shooting, the free flowing. Where the Thunder, it was more just like grit, athleticism, toughness. We are just going to try to punish you.
I don't get that, Slater, because I won't say that, and here's why. Kevin Durant had a choice. Nobody forced them to play the way they were playing. Your turn, my turn. A lot of the time they got better under Billy Donovan. Billy Donovan came from day one, was preaching player movement, ball movement, extra pass. Mm-hmm. That's what he has been preaching since the first day he got in Oklahoma City. So he had a choice to play that way.
The personnel, it wasn't and isn't. Like, Kevin Durant can do all he can. The problem is he's not playing with the Iguodalas, the Draymond Greens. I mean, like, Serge Ibaka can't really pass. I mean, I know he's not here anymore.
And he's not playing with two of the most skilled players of all time.
I mean, and yet they were still up 3-1 on that team. Do you understand that they were still up 3-1 on that team, and it was largely Kevin Durant's fault that they didn't close out that series and advance to the NBA Finals.
Just Game 6. I mean, he was the reason they were up 3-1, too. We always got to remember, like, he was incredible during the playoffs, but particularly defensively. He didn't shoot it as well. The thing, I just figured I think what we maybe miscalculated was how much he envied the way the Warriors play. And because I always kind of thought especially the way he talked to us about the Thunder and about how, people overlook them, this or that, because, they're not, whatever, the quotes he has from the season about the Warriors and Spurs. I always thought he enjoyed their identity of the length and the toughness. And you can rip Russell Westbrook, you can rip Scott Brooks, Kendrick Perkins, whoever. You can go after them, but like when they get in a playoff series, you have to beat them, and they're going to bruise you up. To me, even leaving Steven Adams is interesting to me. Like from his perspective, like the Thunder, I thought was really building this tough mentality, and. Maybe he just wanted to play with more of the Warrior style play. And I think he's been eyeing that for a while.
I overestimated how much he wanted to actually beat that team, because I recall times that people would ask him about Steph Curry, and he wouldn't really. He wasn't very glowing about Steph Curry through the season. He didn't talk a lot about
the press conference about Curry's defense. I mean, I know it was more Westbrook, but
yeah, and. I think I overestimated that. I mean, and maybe it was one of those things that came on late. Maybe it was one of those things that he finally got to the end of the season and sat down and said, "This is better for me. This is more comfortable for me."
There's one other thing that I think could be in play here, and no one wants to hear it. No one wants to acknowledge it, but it's the fact that you have a 27, almost 28-year-old black multi-millionaire athlete living in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that every 27-year-old multi-millionaire black athlete does not want to live in Oklahoma City, but maybe Kevin Durant didn't. And maybe he just wants to go to a better city, and that's fine. I get it. It could be a lifestyle thing in addition to the basketball thing. Maybe he didn't want to play with Russell anymore. I don't know, but I think that could also factor into it.
I agree with that, and I think more than maybe just that he didn't want to. I think we need to remember he can be influenced at times, and it's just the people around him. Or if it's during the NBA season, he's super, just like Westbrook. He's professional. He's always thinking about his job. In a lot of ways, Oklahoma City is a good place for him to play professionally during the NBA season when he really is focusing. But the problem is he has a lot of these friends, these people around him, that they're not as focused or serious about their jobs at all time during the NBA season, where they are hanging out in Oklahoma City. They might be in his ear.
It's a great point.
They might be in his ear talking about how they don't want to live there. And these are people he listens to very much. These are people who are talking about at the beginning when we were talking this exit interview, when I was saying, hey, you going to talk to Russ? And he's like, well, I'm not sure. I'm going to talk to – he's going to talk more. And I'm not just talking about Charlie Bell's manager, Rich, his agent. I mean, these are other people around him too.
No, I mean, like, for example, to your point, Slater, to your point, for example, Wale, the rapper, if he comes to town, what are they doing? They're hanging out at his house? JayZ and Beyonce, they come to town. What are they doing? Like,
they're not going to
they're going to go to the game. Yeah, definitely not going to Pink Parrot now.
Not anymore.
So if they come to town, they're going to go to the game and then what? Just go back to the airport, get on their private jet and take off? Like, it's not San Francisco or the Bay Area. It's not New York. It's not Chicago or L.A.
He had to erect a restaurant in his name to give himself a hangout spot.
Right. I don't even think they hung out there much.
Yeah, I know, right? No, I mean, I look that, and then like I was just kind of getting to the endorsement. There's rumors about Nike wanting to really push him to the Bay Area because they want him to maybe take some shade away from Under Armour's big guy, Steph Curry. I'd like to think that didn't play a factor, that anything of Nike's like their motivations didn't really play into it, because look, he should be allowed to play wherever he wants professionally. He can do all the commercials, everything else Nike wants to do. I'd like to think independently he'd be like, look, this is where I want to play, or this is not where I want to play. But who knows? Maybe that plays into it. I think all this stuff we're talking about does. And it led to Golden State.
Slater, you know that I've long felt like this, and, I might have said it on this podcast before, but I've long thought that Durant has been much more of a follower than a leader. And I think that the view that I have of him in that sense, it really bubbled up when I guess it was at the All-Star game. At the All-Star game 2 years ago, when he started going off on the media, and he just really cozied up to Russell Westbrook and started taking on his personality. Leaders don't do that. Kevin Durant became sort of what's the word I'm looking for? He sort of adopted Russell's demeanor a little bit because he was around him so much. And, that's fine. People, you need followers in this world, but we didn't think Kevin Durant was. And I think that just kind of goes back to what you're saying about how he's easily influenced. And I don't know if this decision was totally on him, if it was people in his ear. But I do feel like from my time around him, I always viewed him as being easily influenced and being more of a follower than a leader. Which,
as I will continue to mention for the 19th time, this is all okay. It's
fine. Okay. It's okay, Oklahoma. We get it, Slater. It's all right. He can make that decision. So within his right.
I don't want to sit here and act like we should be spurned by any of this.
No, he was a free agent. He gave us 8 great years.
Very much.
Gave me one good one, or I gave him one decent.
Well,
one.
I just mean for the entire city, or say whatever.
No, he's totally within his right to make this decision. But that again, it's not anger, like Eric said. It's disappointment, and for me, it's disappointment in him. The fact that he would make such a decision, knowing that you were so close and that you could have taken the challenge, but you chose not to. And it's largely your fault that you did not get back to the NBA Finals.
And it's also like it's disappointing when I think about it more too. It just makes Game 6 even more of a specter over this franchise. Like, I was thinking to myself at the time, like, okay, Game 6, eventually they'll be able to erase this if Kevin Durant comes back and they get back to that point and have more success against Golden State. But the body language at the end of the game, the way they threw that game away, that being the final moments of Kevin Durant at Chesapeake Energy Arena as a Thunder player were some of the worst body language and execution you've seen in his tenure. And it was just thinking back to that is very, very disappointing.
But like you're saying, though, Slater, I totally get it. I mean, the guy's going to a great team. He's got a great chance at winning the championship. They're going to be the heavy favorite next year. Good for him. It's going to take me some time to get over the fact that he just shied away from the challenge. That to me that's tough. That's a tough one to swallow. When you think you know a guy and what he's about and what matters to him, that one's tough to swallow.
Yeah, but one thing everyone needs to understand too, as hard as everyone's taking it, as much as everyone's like, man, they could have won it last year. Man, they should have won it, 2 or 3 times before. I don't think anyone is taking this worse probably and will maybe rue it as much later in life as Kevin Durant. You know what I mean? Like, he wanted to win these titles. He you know how bad he's probably envisioned winning one for Oklahoma City? You know how bad when he's 50 or whenever, even right now, a year from now, he'll think back and like really, really regret not winning it.
Are we sure?
I mean,
like, that's the thing that I got to question everything at this point. Are we sure? Because he did make some comments about how.
I'm pretty sure.
No, Slater, he made some comments about how, winning isn't everything and, it's just a game. And, like, he's been on the record several times with those types of comments. And now he just basically alleviated the pressure from himself and no longer has the burden of carrying a team or a franchise. And he had some help. It's not like he was in LeBron's situation in Cleveland before Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love showed up. But he no longer has that burden of doing it with Russell Westbrook and, a couple of other guys. Like, he can now have that comfort zone of 3 other All-Stars around him, a proven team that just won the most NBA games in regular season history and won a championship 2 years ago.
I'm just saying, I can pretty much guarantee you all he's thinking about right now or lately. Well, he's thinking about obviously what's ahead, but I think he's thinking about what's left behind and what he wasn't able to accomplish. And I think that's going to eat at him for a long time, forever.
If he's
what?
Well, if he's somebody who's as easily influenced and susceptible to people in his ear as we think he is, then he is going to think about those things, and he is somebody who's introspective and cares about what people think. And you know what? That makes him 100% he is. That makes him like a majority of people on Earth. That makes him a human.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, guys. I mean, we were speculating before, but a good friend of mine has been sending me direct messages during this podcast, and it's from an article from Howard Beck of Bleacher Report, and the headline says, "Frustration with Westbrook sent Durant fleeing. Opens door to trouble for NBA." So apparently there's some quotes from Kevin Durant's camp about Westbrook, the Thunder, things like that. Now, I haven't gotten into it. I just opened it up on my phone, but
that is interesting.
That's pretty telling and significant that this would come out. And here's one quote. It says, "Ultimately, he got frustrated and felt that they had plateaued," said a person with insight into Durant's thought process. "Donovan came in, and he still had the same issues that he had with Russ under Scottie. The offense didn't change much. He still had to take a ton of contested shots every game, and that's when he had the ball at all." End quote.
Yeah. Look. I two things here. Number one.
Hang on. Hold the thought, Slater. Here's another quote. It says, "He's never going to have a game in Golden State where Steve Kerr has to say at halftime, 'You guys need to get Kevin the ball,' which happened in OKC." The same person said. So there's some pretty telling quotes coming out now, and
Two things.
It's probably not speculation at this point.
Yes, number one, clearly, we talked about it earlier in the podcast. Clearly, okay, that's part of, I don't want to say the majority of the reason. That's not super surprising. Like I said earlier, we probably should have seen it and identified it more, that it was some court friction, even if it was not off-court friction, number one. Number two, that's not a good thing for Kevin Durant's camp to be saying right now. They should not be going out the door blasting a guy that worked like Russell Westbrook worked, and they shouldn't be blasting Russell Westbrook. I think that's kind of low.
I agree, but
even if that's the truth, and look, we're journalists, so we should want these quotes. Good job by Howard Beck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But the writing was on the wall, though, and that's kind of what I was speaking to earlier. There were always those moments of, like you said, friction or tension that were clear for anyone to see who was paying attention. It was easy for us to say, "Oh no, this is a great team. It's great for the city. It's great for the community." We can turn a blind eye to it and say it's not happening. It doesn't exist. But there were clear moments where you saw the frustration in his face, in his body language.
Yeah. And I don't know, sometimes it's masked, because the truth is, like, he didn't become, I remember a quote he gave to me, it was early this season. It was before he got inducted in the Hall of Fame by Russell Westbrook. Kevin said, just, am I gonna not like this guy because sometimes I get mad if he takes like a few more shots than I do a game? Like, no, like, this is like a good, long time, lifelong friend of mine. I'm not gonna be mad just because he shot 20 times and I shot 18. Where the truth within that quote is, he's right. He was so good about not letting it bleed over to personal stuff that we just kind of assumed that professionally it was fine too, and maybe it wasn't,
And that's the biggest problem to me, is because Kevin Durant had the clout, the stature to be able to say something, and he chose not to. He chose to let it keep going on the way it did, and ultimately decided to leave. And as this article is saying, a big reason, clearly at this point, was because of Russell Westbrook, and that to me is, I labeled it earlier as a sucker move. I could say some other things, but I will reserve those characterizations, and I'll just say, okay, I'm disappointed in him for not taking more control of that situation as the face of the franchise, the leader of this team.
Okay, quickly. We're going to talk, I think, down the line and into next week, and like what this team looks like going forward without Kevin Durant. But I think the number one thing, and the thing we need to have a quick discussion about, is what's going to go on with Russell Westbrook. Because to me, he holds the keys to the future of this franchise. If he wants to stay around and he lets it be known to them, even if it's not through an extension this summer, then he'll be around and they'll build around him. But if he wavers, Sam Presti can't lose Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook and get back nothing.
I would trade him.
You have to.
Unless he gives me an assurance that he's going to re-sign. If he does not, I'm trading him. And I might trade him before the season starts.
Yeah. Because you're going to get a lot more than you would in February.
It's tricky, though, because, and I'm surprised that Orlando did it with Serge, with him being able to walk next year potentially. Russell could walk, so he's got to give his new team an assurance that he's going to re-sign with them, or else they're not going to want to give up a lot of stuff.
Or his new team has to be confident enough, like the Lakers or something, like, oh, we get him, he'll love it here, he's from L.A.
Right. I think he would re-sign with the Lakers. Now, I've got people talking to me about Andrew Wiggins and Chris Dunn or Ricky Rubio.
But he's not staying in Minnesota.
I don't think he's re-signing in Minnesota.
He's not playing for Tom Thibodeau.
And it hurts the Thunder. Like, that hamstrings the Thunder greatly because they're limited in what they can do and how many places they can send them and what kinds of packages they can get back because of that.
Are we sure that he's not going to just be willing to stay in Oklahoma City and say, look, Steven Adams is his kind of player. I think if he could create a center, he'd create Steven Adams. He loves Steven Adams.
Slater,
that's kind of their 1-2.
I don't think we should make the same mistake that we just made for the last 2-3 years or whatever with Kevin Durant.
Agreed.
There are a lot of
100%
rumblings.
agreed.
There are a lot of rumblings that Russell Westbrook is already got one foot out of the door.
Yeah.
And I mean,
No, you're right.
there are people that I talked to yesterday that said, regardless of what Durant decided, Russell Westbrook is gone next year. So
Well, then that's part of why Kevin Durant is gone this year.
potentially.
That's the one thing we got to remember in this whole process. I don't know the answer.
So what would you do?
If you believe he's going to leave, or if he's not giving you assurances in any way, you have to bite the bullet. I mean, and Sam Presti's shown that he will.
Yep.
So
He did it with Jeff Green. He did it with James Harden. He did
he'd
it
have
with
to get a
Serge
really good
Ibaka.
haul, but if you got a D'Angelo Russell in a pick or something,
Well, he's not going out.
I don't know what you get, but
We were talking about the Lakers as a potential option. I don't think he wants D'Angelo Russell, and maybe he doesn't look at the snitch situation the same. I'm talking Sam Presti as a lot of the other people.
Yeah.
But I would think that he would go Brandon Ingram, Julius Randle,
Picks.
and some picks, maybe Jordan Clarkson.
hand over the offense to your boy Cameron Payne.
Yeah, and the picks to me are the thing. I mean, if you do get a Julius Randle, that's a guy that could be dealt again, but the picks are where it's at.
To me, you need a 3, and you need a point guard. If Westbrook's gone, you need a point guard. Durant's already gone, so you need a small forward. The big man situation is set. Adams, stud. We all know that. Enes Kanter, good player. Domantas Sabonis, they're super high on. They drafted Domantas Sabonis. The Magic didn't. They're very high on him. Their big man is set for a long time with young guys. They need to get wings, especially in this age of NBA basketball. They need to get wings and a point guard, especially if Russ isn't sticking around. They have a very good young point guard in Payne, so that kind of eases it. To me, the wing spot, the 3, is just gaping hole right now. I think we all know why.
Well, for them to score a high pick or a solid pick in the next draft, which is supposed to be much better, I think Russell Westbrook could fetch something pretty well if they're looking for that.
Yeah. All right. You guys want to come back maybe later this week, next week, talk more about the future? I'm sure some other stuff will come out too.
Yeah, we might be talking about Russell Westbrook somewhere else. Maybe not this week, but in the next few weeks.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's going to be fascinating. I think Sam Presti's got about 2-3 days to really sit on things and then move forward from there.
Keep your head up, Oklahoma. You still got an NBA franchise.
Take 'em out, Darnell.
You still got an NBA franchise. I'm not going to tell you what to think, but just keep your head up.
And you got a good GM. The guy's done a
great
good
GM.
job. You got a good GM. This isn't some situation where it's like the Knicks and James Dolan's running this thing just willy-nilly and Phil Jackson doesn't really have a plan. Like, you got a good GM.
And a nice mix of young talent still, with Adams and Kanter and Payne and Sabonis.
Look, if Westbrook's back, this is maybe a 6-7 seed, maybe, which is okay. Like Kevin Durant leaving, it's okay to be a 6 or 7 seed. It's okay if Russell signed long term and they were just the Memphis Grizzlies for the next 4 or 5 years and they just got to the playoffs and tried to fight into the second round, and sometimes they got there, sometimes they didn't.
It beats being the Sacramento Kings.
And look, losing a guy like Kevin Durant will make a coach look bad. But I think Billy Donovan's proven that he can make necessary adjustments to get the most out of guys who might have deficiencies, like an Andre Robertson or an Enes Kanter. So it's going to be interesting to see how he makes these adjustments now when he's lost one of the best scorers ever. I feel like I'm confident he can make some good adjustments.
Yeah, I'm confident.
All right, it'll be interesting. Take him out, Darnell, with your favorite song.
Little pour.
Keep pouring it out, Oklahoma.